it was one night where the concept of death, and I know you probably wouldn't expect me to go that route, but the concept of death just really clicked for her. And her mortality and my mortality and Doug's mortality. And she started to cry.
Wow.
Because she was already grieving the possibility of Doug and I not being around anymore.
Silent night. I only have one wish for the shooting star.
What? Okay. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the never-ending Guess Today's Theme Music Saga. What is this?
It's a Christmas song.
It is? This is Christmas?
Why?
Our guest is such a wonderful gift to
Oh,
us.
so
She is such a
special.
wonderful
Thank
gift.
you.
Sounds like a vacation song.
I'm
Christmas in spring.
I'm so confused.
Me too. Me too, Chris.
Thank you, Joyce. I'm so confused. I was confused about why we have a different theme song every week to start with. That was confusing enough.
It just keeps you on your toes, you know?
I guess it does. Well, Joyce, it for sure does. For those of you who are listening and you're not watching, you're hearing a different voice than Grace is. Grace is here.
I'm here.
Kurt, myself, I'm here. Producer Chris, as always, is here.
I'm right here.
And Joyce Jones
Hello.
is here as our
Yay!
guest today.
So excited.
And Joyce is getting she's getting a round of applause.
Well deserved.
And she's getting she's getting thrown into the oddness, the lack of professionalism
That we are.
That we
It's okay.
are.
The on
It's
purpose
okay.
parent.
I am unprofessional too, so we make a good team.
Okay, well,
Nice.
thank you. Well, welcome.
Fits right
You're in
in.
good company.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump right into it. Thanks for listening, those of you who maybe are newer to the podcast, maybe a friend told you about it. As always, on the On Purpose Parent podcast, our goal is just to help give parents some insight, some hope, some help, some tips on raising their kids to be interdependent, lifelong followers of Jesus who want to make a kingdom contribution. At the end of the day, really that's what we think parenting kind of boils down to.
Yeah.
There's more to it than that, but man, if we when we come to our parenting, when the parenting journey kind of comes to an end, which I'm learning never does, by the way. This is my son's 26th birthday today. Is my son's 26th birthday, and he's our youngest.
Oh, wow.
And we're still parenting him in some degree. We're in the consultant stage of parenting. But man, I look back and both of our children, they're interdependent, lifelong followers of Jesus making a kingdom contribution, and that kind of matters more than anything else. And so that's our hope. And along that journey, we go through all these different stages of parenting with different roles and goals. And that's what we've dedicated this series to, is to talking to moms and dads who are on that journey. And in our previous episode, we had Doug Jones, who's Joyce's husband, and they are in the crafting season of parenting. They have 2 elementary age children. And today we're super excited to talk to Joyce and get some of her learnings and her perspectives of parenting in this unique stage of life. But before we do that, Grace.
All right. Well, why don't we have a little icebreaker game to start us off, but for our listeners, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, just what you do, and about your family real quickly. I know your husband was on here last week, but we may have new listeners today, so just so they have a little bit of context on you and your family.
Sure. Well, thank you, Grace. My name is Joyce Jones, and I am married to Doug Jones. He's been on staff at Saddleback now for about 11 years, and we have 2 kids. Emmy, who is going to be 10 soon. She's going to be double digits. And Jude, who is 7. So I am a stay-at-home mom. After Amelia was born, I decided that I wanted to be home full-time. And it's been an absolute gift and privilege. I feel like I have moments where I just realize just the blessing that it is to be home with them. And I let Doug know that the other day. I said, I just feel really grateful for that. So thank you for being the provider of our family so that I can be home with them.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, can't wait to hear more about your experiences parenting at this stage. And we heard a little bit last week too. So it'll be great to kind of hear your perspective as well and your family. But to kind of break the ice, we're going to play a little game that we play with a lot of our kids. Oh, here's
some more
that
music.
intro music to this game.
It's the dish of destiny.
Wow.
The dish.
Oh my
The
goodness.
tub
This is
of
very
truth.
Olympian. It's very sports.
With,
feel. Yeah,
with
yeah.
Doug, you called it like the dish of doom.
Oh, you'll
or
have,
something.
gosh.
you'll
But
have to
with Joyce,
listen
it's
to.
the dish of destiny.
I'm glad that I
Yeah.
have the positive
Well,
spin on it.
it's the same questions in there, so
Okay.
we'll find out if they're doomy
Yes.
or destiny or delightful.
I
or,
know. So what you'll do is you'll pick 3 of these. These are would you rather questions, and then we'll just hit them up one by one. So if you
Okay.
pick 3 slips. What is this? From the dish of
Oh, they're
destiny.
folded.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
I think
bowl
I
of
picked 3.
bewilderment.
The
One at a-
bowl of
okay.
bewilderment. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay. So first one. Would you rather be able to survive without sleeping or without food?
Gosh,
Oh
This
my
is a very
gosh.
appropriate
I-
parenting question, I think,
I
right?
know that one. I know that
Yes.
one.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably without food.
Gosh,
Is that what you were going to say?
no, I was 0 for 3 with your husband Doug. I was
Really?
0 for 3, and now I'm 0 for 1 with Joyce.
It was
Yeah.
really funny. Kurt was like, "Oh, that one's obvious."
Yes,
and
and
they
then
would
he's
both
wrong.
say different things. Yeah.
Yeah, probably without food. Yeah.
Sleep is just it's everything.
I need my sleep.
Yeah.
I
But you
need my
don't. No,
sleep.
that's the point. You don't need it. In this question, you wouldn't need it. That's the beauty of the.
Oh, you don't need it.
Yes, you can
Oh.
survive without
Oh, you
the
can
need
survive
for
without
food
it.
or the
Okay.
need for
Oh, you know what?
sleep.
I interpreted the question differently too.
Oh,
Yes.
well, then maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I may. what-
Either way, we're
Okay.
saying we like sleep.
Yes,
Yeah,
I do. I do
fair
like some
enough.
sleep.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Okay.
Second question. Would you rather go without soap or without toothpaste for the rest of your life? Oh,
That
gosh.
one's easy. Now, for sure, we're gonna align on this one.
Okay, ready?
Yes.
Without soap.
What?
Is that what you?
No.
No, you were gonna say without you.
I'm just trolling Kurt now.
Yeah, I
That's
know. Whatever Kurt would say.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
opposite.
The opposite.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm 0 for 5.
Oh for 5.
Okay,
With the
let's do
Joneses.
the last one. We already did that one. Okay. Would you rather speak and understand every language on the planet or be able to communicate with animals?
Oh, okay. that
this
one's
one's
so
that
weird.
one's so obvious.
Kurt knows.
on,
Let's see if he
Joyce.
gets it
Kurt
right.
has
Come on, Joyce.
strong instincts for himself for these questions.
I think the ability to communicate with animals.
Why? What's the point? What?
Just because
Good
it
answer,
sounds,
good
it sounds
answer.
fun. Like I don't know.
How cool would that be? There are plenty of people that
Exactly.
speak multi languages in the world, but who can
can
speak to animals?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Make it more
Okay.
interesting, more fun.
Yeah. Well, it would be interesting. I guess I'm just more pragmatic. Like, how does that really benefit me? Whereas
like,
if I
what's
can
the point?
speak every language, I can talk to every human.
That is true.
You
You
Human.
can send
That
a
is true,
bird
but I think
to
I'm
deliver a
looking-
message for you.
Oh,
Yes,
that's true.
that's true.
fair.
Well,
That's
you could
true.
ask it.
They used to do
How
that.
do you know it would do it?
Joyce or Joyce, well, Joyce too, but Grace, they used to send birds to deliver
yeah.
messages like
True.
1,000 years ago.
Like
and they
in-
decided,
like in Harry Potter.
Yeah, they decided that's not so awesome.
Oh man. Well, I
Awesome.
stick with my decisions.
Okay.
Nice.
All right,
well,
well-
thank you so much for playing our silly game. You can see here our vibe on this podcast is not too serious, but we do want to be a community of parents in our imperfections, in all of our real, authentic experiences to just be a community with parents in whatever journey that we're going through. So could you start our morning off with sharing what has been maybe 1 or 2 of the most memorable parenting moments that you've had so far?
Yes. I'll start with Jude. And I would say it's probably more of a mundane moment. But it also just had a lot of significance behind it. And it was a moment where I first heard him make little car noises.
Yeah.
And the reason behind that is before he was born, I remember making a post and just saying how much I look forward to that. when I thought about having a boy, I thought him playing with his cars, with his trains. And so that day when I heard him, he was just, I remember he was in his little onesie, his crocodile onesie, his big chubby cheeks, and just making little raspberry noises with his little monster truck along the carpet. And it was just a moment of gratitude because it was a simple moment, but it was a dream come true. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I just felt really grateful to see that come to life. It was really special. It's probably one of my favorite videos of him too. I could show you another day, but that's for Jude. And he still likes monster trucks, by the way. We go to Monster Jam. He still loves his cars. And so, that's my Jude. And then for Emmy, I would say it's a little less lighthearted with Amelia, but it was also a really powerful moment. And it was one night where the concept of death, and I know you probably wouldn't expect me to go that route, but the concept of death just really clicked for her. And her mortality and my mortality and Doug's mortality. And she started to cry.
Wow.
Because she was already grieving the possibility of Doug and I not being around anymore.
Wow.
And up to that point, I mean, I know that, you always know that in the back of your mind, but it also became really real for me as well. And it made me really sad. But I took that moment, Doug and I both took that moment to lay with her, to comfort her, and just to point her towards Jesus and his promises, and of the hope that no matter what, all is well, and that we will be together again. And I do believe that she found comfort in that and still does, because she talks about that every now and again, just the idea of our family not being together one day.
Yeah.
So
That's good. Wow.
Parenting is wild, isn't it? You think about two really memorable moments.
Yeah.
One is pretty mundane.
It is.
Right? I mean, every parent that's ever raised a child, at some point their child has made car noises.
exactly.
Right? And yet the mundane, when it's the first time it's happened, or when it's the fulfillment of something that in your mind you had dreamed about, it'll be so fun someday to hear our son make car noises, that parenting is full of these little and yet really profound moments. And it's also full of seriously profound moments and conversations of you hadn't looked forward to the day that you had that conversation with
I
Emmy,
didn't.
right?
Yeah,
You didn't even know it was coming.
Right.
And yet here you are in the middle of, wow, this is a moment that Doug and I get to really shape, or using our language, craft
Yes.
some aspect of understanding in our daughter's worldview, and her understanding of life and death and who Jesus is and all of that. It's just so powerful.
Yeah.
The journey that we're on as parents. Joyce, as you think about this current stage, you're in this elementary stage. Both Jude and Emmy are elementary age. So you're in what we've coined as the role of a mom of crafter.
Yes.
So you're crafting their faith, you're crafting their worldview. What is something that you've really come to understand and appreciate about the uniqueness of this crafter stage that you're in?
Yes. I'll start with Amelia. Amelia is very lighthearted. She's super fun, but she's also very deep. And she's a deep thinker, and she likes to express herself, whether it's through art, through creating, through her thoughts. And so she asks a lot of questions. She wants to be understood, but she also wants to, understand. So I love that because she comes to Doug and I for guidance. And I love that she comes to us first, and we're able to have that, first dibs on the influence in her life, and that she feels comfortable enough to come to us about the things that she's struggling with or wondering, or just really needs advice on. For Jude, right now it's a fight between what he wants and what we think is best for him, right? So that is a big challenge. But Jude also, he's really good about expressing his frustration, putting those feelings into words. But with that, he's also really good about expressing what he needs. And most of the time at his age and stage, it's a hug.
Right.
And even if it's through tears of anger, which sometimes he'll be like, I need a hug, from the other room. But I love that because
That's so sweet.
yeah, as parents, we want to make things better. We, when they're hurting, when they're frustrated, when they're mad, we want to make things better. So I love that I can be able to do that in a practical way for him. And then most of the time what I find is once his guard is down, I've met his need. Now he's able to receive what I'm trying to communicate in a better way.
Yeah.
And we can talk through what he's feeling. The consequence might still be there, if it's something that, he got in trouble for. But to say, I love you, this is why we're going to proceed this way.
Yeah.
So
That's really awesome.
What are one or two, and they can be good or bad, but one or two like unexpected, you didn't see this one coming,
yeah.
of parenting in this elementary stage and you being a crafter, something that you go, that was awesome, didn't expect it, or wow, that was rough, didn't expect that.
Yeah. This one is pretty hard because what I didn't expect is for how they can do something. Okay, so let me start all over. My reaction, no, not my react. Yeah, how I react to something that they do, and mostly negative behavior, that will open an unhealed wound inside of me.
Wow.
So I find that that happens pretty often, and it doesn't allow me to respond. Instead, I react. And so I think somebody once said, if you get really upset about something, think about why it makes you so upset. And it allows you to think about things more level-headed and not personalize it so much. I just didn't realize how far my kids could push me or the reactions that they can get out of me. So I'm trying to work on responding rather than reacting.
Yeah.
That's a really challenging task, especially when you have things, inside of you that you haven't necessarily dealt with. And it's important to deal with those things and not be caught off guard.
Right. Yeah, that's such a great point.
really
And we've
good.
talked about that a little bit on the podcast about like triggers and how to handle being patient. But it's so true. I think part of what makes parenting so hard is it's not just about parenting the kid. It's about discovering our own maybe hurts or hangups or issues that we've had in the past.
Right.
That in order, like you said it so well, to be able to address our kids, we have to kind of address those past issues as well.
Yeah.
So wow, it's rough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. It is. But it's important work to do for sure. I realize that.
It is important work because we don't want our issues, if that's the right phrase,
Right.
to become our kids' issues.
That's right.
And that's
Yeah.
where you talk all the time, whether it's addictions or anger issues or abusive behavior, or less serious stuff.
Right.
We talk about break the cycle, right?
Yes.
And so often the reason the cycle, whatever the cycle is, in some families, it's just a cycle of we don't talk about our feelings, right? It's not it's not an abuse cycle. I think that would be my cycle is I grew up in a home where my mom and dad never asked me how I was feeling. I never saw them express their feelings. So now as an adult, I'm not very great at that, right? So my issues then become my kids' issues. And praise the Lord, I married a woman who's, has breaking cycles.
Amazing.
Yes,
Rachel
all the
is
time.
good at
Wonderful.
talking about her
breaks,
feelings.
She breaks every cycle. But it's a weird one because we're never going to be perfect parents.
Right.
Yeah.
And our issues, sometimes we think we've got issues that we have resolved, and it's not until a parenting moment happens when we realize, oh gosh, I didn't even know that was still an issue in my life, or it's kind of it's peeling a scab off of something that I thought was kind of healed, but maybe it's not. And it's just a reminder of kind of the yin and the yang of we want to be good, we want to be healthy parents so that our issues don't become our kids' issues.
Exactly.
And at the same time, we're never going to we're never going to have it all figured out. And we're always going to be flawed parents.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we're always going to, no matter how much hard work we do to not react, somewhere along the way, they're going to push a button or poke at something that's going to bring a reaction
Yeah.
and remind us of, oh man, I still have work to do. And that's a good learning.
Exactly.
It's painful, but it's a good learning
Yeah,
for us.
and
It
it's a
is.
good encouragement for us to continue to lean into community, like our podcast community or whatever circle of parenting friends that you have, because rather than a place of judgment, it can't, which sometimes, unfortunately, that could be the reality, but really it's a place where we realize, wow, we're all kind of struggling through this together. And we continue to struggle, but we're going to do this together as a community.
Totally. And I think in moments where, that reaction comes, they get that negative reaction out of me, I try to do my best to circle back later when I'm cooled off and to say, this is what was actually going on inside of me, it has nothing to do with you. I am responsible for how I react. I'm responsible for my emotions, and I'm sorry.
Oh, so good.
And trying to be better next time.
Yeah.
Well, and that's
awesome.
why the label of this season, this stage of parenting for you as a parent of crafter, is those elementary years are such vital years for you to be crafting in them. And when you circle back around and you're willing, which is hard to do as a parent,
Yes.
to say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. My reaction was about me, not about you, right? That's hard stuff to say. But when you're willing to go there, what you're doing is you're crafting in them,
Yes.
right? This sense of, it's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to admit my own faults.
Yes.
You're
Yep.
crafting in them a healthy understanding that, wow, my mom is not perfect.
Right.
And she's still on a journey, right? And
Yes.
they're not necessarily processing it all that way, but you are crafting
They're
that.
experiencing it.
Yeah,
Right.
they're experiencing that. So good on you, Joyce.
That's awesome.
Good.
I actually got to see that yesterday where, sometimes you think you're doing work as a parent. You're like, is this working? Is this resounding with anybody? But yesterday, Amelia, she came up to me. She responded in a way that wasn't, it wasn't nice. And so afterwards, she hopped in the shower and she came out. She's like, Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have responded that way. It was disrespectful and I'm sorry. And I was just like, thank you. Thank you. But it means a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
It does.
Yep.
That's so cool.
And
That's amazing.
man, you need those little wins, right? Because the next 5 times she might not apologize.
Totally.
Right? I mean, but man, you're going to hold on to a parent going, but I remember when she did.
Yeah.
And I know that seed has been planted. She does have that skill. She's a 4th grader. She's not
Exactly.
going to get it right every time.
Exactly.
But there's hope.
It's there.
Yeah.
There's hope. That's good.
That's really good.
Well, when you think about your role as a crafter, and we've established in our on purpose parent plan that one of the primary goals when you have elementary kids and as you're crafting them is this goal of nurturing their faith. And when we're followers of Jesus and we're plugged into a church, sometimes it's tempting to just assume, well, that's the church's job. The church, that's why we take them to church, so they can nurture their faith. But we all know that that's only a small piece of the picture.
Absolutely.
At the best, kids are at church a few hours a week. The most committed families, their kids are only at church a few hours a week, and they're at home and living out in the real world the rest of the time. What's something that that you would say, man, this is a strategy or something that's been effective in your goal of helping nurture your children's faith outside of the church?
I would say it's a combination of a few things. As we talk about the hard things with our kids, giving them, and it's something that I personally use, so I know that it's effective. God's word is living and it's alive, and we know that we can use it anytime. And so when they come to me about something hard, I try to, give them a verse. Here's something to fight against what you're struggling with. And, simple ones that they can remember.
Right.
That's one thing that we try to do. Another thing is that we try to make it a point to pray together as a family every night, to be actively listening for the needs that are out there and pray together for those things. I would say hospitality is another one. Chris, I actually got this one from you. And it's the idea of making your home the place where your kids' friends want to be at, where they feel welcome and loved. Even it doesn't have to be this grandiose kind of thing. It could just be setting out some snacks and just creating an environment where they are happy to be there and just making it fun and enjoyable. And so I've been trying to do that with the kids, hosting little parties, for different occasions, having dinner together sometimes after KSG, Kids Small Group. So things like that. And I think with that is just establishing those relationships of trust and fun, and that could be the stepping stone to something else in the future.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to keep in mind.
That's really good. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm going to read between the lines for a second, and you can tell me if I'm off track or not.
Okay.
But because what Doug talked about last week was very similar, and there's almost like two ways to go about nurturing our kids' faith. One is the very disciplined, strategic way of, we have family devotions every Wednesday night. We have family game night, and we play mostly Christian board games every Monday night. We pray every night. We have family Bible verse memorization, right? And it's a very, very like strategic, structured, intentional way to disciple and nurture our children's faith. And then there's the Jones way, the Johnson way. What I think I know about the Reeds and the Yoons way is a little bit more of what I would just call like a holistic, organic approach of living life as a family in such a way that biblical principles and the Jesus way of approaching life just sort of leaks out of and into everything we do as a family.
Yes.
It's just kind of who we are.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that compartmentalizing it is a bad strategy. I'm just suggesting, because I think sometimes we, as parents, we almost get like guilt heaped on us because we're not doing the super strategic, intentional things. And if that works for your family, go for it. There's nothing bad about it.
Right.
There is an other way that might be just as effective if you're a little bit more of an organic family who it comes more naturally to you as parents, and it just works better if you're a family to say, hey, we want the same thing. We're just going to kind of go at it in a way that's a little bit more organic and loose and a little bit more of a holistic approach as opposed to a little bit more compartmentalized. Neither one's better than the other.
Right.
I never had anybody when I was a young parent free me from the guilt of, I felt this pressure, like you gotta do it. You gotta do this, this, and this, or else because your kids are getting inundated by the world. The world has a plan, so you better have a plan, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
So am I off base with how I'm reading how you and Doug do it?
You're absolutely right. I think our family focuses more on seizing the opportunity and trying to incorporate God in it and pointing them towards Jesus as we see opportunities arise. And I would say that it's bared fruit.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That's really great. And also, I mean, just to go off of that, one of the things that both you and Doug talked about was just being open to the questions that they have, whatever questions that they have. You said Emmy does, she's the creative, and she also sometimes have these deep questions. I think even that is nurturing faith. Just whatever questions they may have, whether it's like really deep, like about death, or something a little bit maybe more lighthearted, just creating that space is such a wonderful crafter role as parents, and it doesn't have to be forced.
Right.
Yes.
It's just, what are they curious about, or what are they worried about?
Exactly.
And then meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it's so good.
Well, when we kind of train our youth leaders and our children's workers, our children leaders at church, we talk about the fact that everything teaches something, or we'll call it the hidden curriculum, and not making the mistake of thinking The only time the kids in student ministries or kids ministry, the only time they're learning is during the formal teaching time.
No.
They're learning all the time how we
Exactly.
treat the disruptive
Yes.
student, how we treat first time guests, how we handle it when our team didn't win the little game that we played in Sunday school. They're like how we're always teaching.
Yes.
And don't make the mistake of thinking, well, the only time is in this compartmentalized 20 minutes. And I think that's true for parenting too,
That's
is the
good.
reminder that it's great if we have compartmentalized, intentional family devotions. But boy, mom and dad, don't make the mistake of thinking that's the only time you're modeling Jesus. Or that's the
Right.
only time you're teaching the faith is during family devotions.
Yeah.
How mom and dad talk to each other is teaching.
Yeah.
How mom and dad respond to stuff going on in the neighborhood,
Yes.
right? When kids hear mom and dad gossiping about the old lady's dog who poops on the front yard. That's just my neighbor. That might just be my neighborhood.
Are you calling out a
that's
neighbor right
I'm
now?
calling out a neighbor. My goodness gracious, the amount of poop that lady's dog puts on my front yard.
Oh,
Right?
no.
But how our kids hear us
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about that,
It's true.
it might teach more
Yeah.
about our faith and our relationship with Jesus and how we live his ways or not than any family devotion ever could.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it's in the subtleties and they
Yeah.
do pick up. They are listening. They'll
Right.
tell me, Mom, I'm always listening. I'm like, I know you are.
Yeah.
Even when you think they're not. So
Yeah.
to just stay mindful of that is super important.
That's really good. So we talked about how parenting is tough. We said parenting is a wild ride. I mean, you can get the simple, mundane moments to these wild, deep moments, and also that we have to be introspective about our own issues to be able to really be there for our kids in a healthy, holistic way. I mean, all of that is so tough. Parenting is it's a tough, tough job. Being in this stage of crafter and having kids that are 10 and 7, for other parents, any listeners that we have that have kids maybe in similar stage, any word of advice that you might give to them, any thought to just encourage them as they are living out their life in this very tough but beautiful experience of being a parent?
Yes. I think the biggest thing for me, and Doug is really good at embracing this as well, and it's something that somebody once told me, and I really took it to heart, and I've just seen how beneficial it's been. And it ties to what we've already been talking about, and it's listening even when it's inconvenient. Because most of the time, your kids are going to want to open up at inconvenient times. My kids like to wait until after we've put them to bed
Of course.
to wake up and come with the steep question. But I've actually come to really embrace those moments because I know they're going to spark really meaningful conversation or just to have the ability to see them come stressed and to see them leave at peace. That really makes me feel like I'm there for them. They can count on me, and they know that they can count on me and Doug to be there for them and to guide them. And along with that, I think grace and wisdom first over shame. When they're coming to you about the hard things, it's hard not to react. And just to do your best to hold back those reactions. Maybe, it still needs to come with a consequence, but to invite that in, extend the grace that Christ extends to us, impart what you want to communicate to them, the wisdom part, and then have that, because I think when we think a lot about our wounds and what affects us, a lot of it starts in childhood. And we're affected by the things that are said or the reactions that we got when we were little. And so if I can be that person for my kids who says, I hear you, maybe that shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't have done that, but I still love you and I'm still here for you. And I think hopefully my hope, my prayer is that they'll grow into adults who know that they are loved by me no matter what. They are loved
so
by their
good.
dad no matter what.
Wow.
That's
Oh
powerful.
my gosh.
So good.
That was so good.
Grace.
Wow.
it's obvious you're such a better parent than your husband, Doug. Okay. No, I mean, but seriously, I'm sitting here listening to you, and by the way, Doug as well. He said some of the same, very similar things, which makes sense. You guys are obviously
Doing so
aligned
good.
for the most part as parents. Man, thanks for sharing. I know it's intimidating to come on a podcast and answer questions, and you know, it can feel like we're positioning you as some kind of parenting expert or somebody who's doing it all right. You're not. You're not a parenting expert.
I definitely am not.
You're not doing it right. Neither
Neither
Yeah.
neither of us. Yes, to both of us. We aren't either. We aren't either.
Well, that makes me feel good. Yes.
But I hope that this episode, and really this whole podcast for people who listen, is just a breath of hope,
Yeah.
a breath of a little bit of fresh wind in their sails. So those of you who are listening, maybe you don't have a elementary age child, but you know somebody who does. And would you please consider passing both last week's episode and this week's episode, because these are the two that we're dedicating to the role of raising kids in 1st through 5th grade, crafting them and nurturing their faith. And hopefully what Doug and Joyce have both shared over the last 2 episodes is helpful to them. It's been helpful
great.
for me,
Oh,
just as I'm
man.
listening, I'm going, man, that's such good stuff.
So good.
And how much of it, which we've talked about, it's not like you move from one stage
Right.
to the next or one role or goal to the next, never to think about the other one again. you know, there's always a blending of. And so even as Joyce was talking about listening and grace over shame, well, I'll tell you what, if you're the parent of a junior high or high schooler, that's a skill you can still utilize.
Absolutely.
So even if you're not in this current stage of parenting, I think there's some
Gems.
gems,
Yes.
just some
Real-
gold nuggets. So
Yep.
thanks, Joyce, for that. Thanks for everybody for listening.
Thank you.
Producer Chris, as always, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Yes.
see
Thank
you
you so
around.
much.
Do you know Cupid sent his arrow straight to my heart waterfall? In love this Christmas, Santa that would
It is
be
a Christmas song.
It really is a
Oh my
Christmas
gosh.
song. I wasn't kidding.